This is absolutely insane. This happened in broad daylight in the United States of America. What happened? Well, that's where things get complicated. The sheriff held a press conference and dropped two huge bombshells as to what was behind this interaction. Stick around to find out what the sheriff said. But first, as you can see, an armed man in a ski mask gets out of this green Acura and he approaches a white Dodge Durango. This happened at 6 p.m. in Winter Springs, Florida last Thursday, with all these people watching everywhere. He eventually gets into the back seat of the car. The woman driving that car, she called her husband, and she said, "Hey, there's a green Acura. It's smashing into the back of my vehicle. It's ramming me." And the husband says to her, "Don't stop. Whatever you do, don't stop." Nobody calls 911. As the video ends, both these vehicles drive away. About an hour later, witnesses heard gunshots and saw a vehicle completely engulfed in flames. Things were so badly burned that you couldn't tell what type of vehicle it was, but they knew that there was a body inside, and they believed that body was of the woman in that Dodge Durango. Investigators found 12 shell casings at the scene. They believe she was shot, and then somebody lit the Durango on fire. What's going on here? We got a lot of crazy questions to answer. It's like something out of a movie or a third world country. Why were these men targeting 31-year-old Katherine Aguasvias? And who is this woman? Let's go to the press conference.
Katherine Aguasvias was a U.S. citizen. She had lived in the United States for the past 5 years. She had established U.S. citizenship. Her home country was the Dominican Republic. She and her husband were associated. Husband is still associated with two businesses in South Florida. Her residency is in Homestead, and the businesses are a barbershop and a beauty salon.
So Katherine is an American citizen, and her husband are involved in some business. But it's a big mystery as to why she was away from home to begin with. We do know this. We know that she called her husband on the phone, and she told him, "There's a vehicle behind me. It's a green Acura." Interestingly enough, only 3 of these cars exist in the state of Florida, and 2 of them have been destroyed. This is the only green Acura like it, and it's slamming into the back of her car.
About a half a mile or so prior to that intersection, she started to notice that the green Acura was behind her, and the Acura was actually ramming into her back bumper at that time. At that time, she picked up the phone and called her husband, told her husband that she was being rammed, that there was somebody there that was following her. The husband provided the advice to don't stop anywhere. There are no known reports to the sheriff's office or policing authorities made by either Katherine or the husband that we're aware of.
No one calls 911. Who does that? Who has a call come in from their wife? They answer the phone. Their wife goes, "There's an Acura. It's ramming into my car." They go, "Whatever you do, don't stop." And then they don't call 911. And then an hour or more later, they wait until the police contact them to tell them, "Hey, your wife is dead." Something's going on here. Is this a mob hit? Is this some sort of gang activity? What is happening? First, what actually went down beyond the scope of the video we saw?
We suspect that one of the occupants of the green Acura gets out of the Acura wearing a black hoodie, wearing a ski type of mask or a ninja mask, as we've called it, carrying what appears to be consistent with a automatic handgun, consistent with a 10-millimeter handgun, which will come into play a little bit later in my news conference. Points directly at the driver, Katherine, tells her, we suspect, to unlock the door, which she does. He jumps in the rear passenger seat behind the driver, and she immediately makes a U-turn.
After the video, they had her drive around the city a little bit. Obviously, they knew exactly where they were going, and they took her to a construction site where there were about 12 rounds fired off. She obviously was shot, and the vehicle was burned so badly, they didn't even know what type of vehicle it was when they discovered it.
By the time authorities with the Osceola County Sheriff's Office arrived there was so much damage to the vehicle, you could not positively identify the vehicle, but they also discovered that one person was deceased and found in that vehicle. Now, it's an important part here because we believe that to be the vehicle and the decedent to be Katherine, but we have to positively confirm that through the scientific method of DNA examinations and dental records. But from all accounts of looking at the scene, it looks like the vehicle and is consistent to everything that we've seen so far.
Bombshell number one. When the cops talked to Katherine's husband, he says, well, she was in town in Central Florida and she was hanging out with some family. Turns out it was a lie. She doesn't have any family in Central Florida at all.
Follow-up investigation, the initial report that was provided to us was Katherine was traveling to Central Florida to visit with family members. We know of no family members that are living in Central Florida.
So what's very clear by now to me, to you, and anybody else with a brain is that this was targeted. This was intentional. Everybody knew who everybody was. I'm pretty sure Katherine knew who the people in the Acura were, and they certainly knew who she was. But this wasn't some big, grand accident.
We do feel that the occupants of the green Acura, both the driver and at least one other person that got out of the car and entered into the Durango, knew exactly who they were following. We are, again, still putting together to try to explain a motive. There's no criminal history here for either Katherine or her husband in the United States. There's no clear indicator why somebody would do this, why would they target them. But we do feel and believe because she was being followed, they were watching that. She called her husband. Husband said, don't leave the car. No reports to law enforcement that this was not a random act of violence, that the perpetrators knew exactly who they were going after.
Before we get to the second big bombshell, two big questions about the video. Number one, whose white Dodge Durango was this? Well, even though it wasn't titled to Katherine, it was the car that she was known to drive. And when you pick up the phone and dial the number by for sale on the back of the Durango, her husband answered the phone. That's how the police got a hold of him. And as for the green Acura, perhaps the biggest question, where did that come from? It was sold in Central Florida and then purchased by somebody who, after signing the papers and taking the car, vanished. Who were these people? And were they possibly involved in yet another murder just about a day before all this went down? Here's what we know about the green Acura.
And the people who purchased the car never came back to finish the additional paperwork. They still owed the person money, so the car has been out on the streets probably since February, unregistered, undocumented with a license plate. Any license plate that it had on at any given time was just temporarily put on, largely from a stolen tag.
And that brings us to the second bombshell. And this one is a doozy. When they started talking to Katherine's husband, they knew something wasn't right. Now, they don't want to say this publicly, but it's clear that this guy knows more than he's saying. And so, in an effort not to spook him, they go easy on him in the press. But when they talked to her husband, they said, are you willing to work with us? He said, yes. And they said, will you hand over your cell phone? And he did. And you know what they found on his cell phone? They found a recording of an officer who was digging into the investigation. This officer recorded himself saying, what kind of evidence do you guys have? He pretended to be somebody he wasn't, gave a fake name, and tried to dig up as much as he could about the people who were investigating this case. And this officer, this sheriff's officer, sent that to Katherine's husband. And the cops found it on the phone. That led to the cops arresting one of their own, a sheriff's officer. Why is he putting his job on the line for this guy? What is happening here? Are there people inside the sheriff's office who are corrupted by whoever these gang members, mafia people, whoever they are? Is that what we're dealing with? Here's how they announced it.
Second part that I want to brief up on is an Orange County deputy was arrested by the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. Francisco Estrella was arrested last night by our agency.
This story is unbelievable. It has everything: violence and mystery and corruption and questions galore. And we know one thing for sure. As of right now, as of the time I'm making this video, and I will do updates, so make sure you follow along, they have no idea where the guys with the guns are.
We still have incredibly dangerous people that are out there on the streets. We still want to encourage our public to again, not approach these individuals. They should be perceived as armed and dangerous. Anybody who has any information about the occupants of this incredibly rare vehicle here in the state of Florida should contact authorities, either the Orange County Sheriff's Office or the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, or if you feel more comfortable, Crime Line, where you could be eligible for a reward and remain anonymous as we go.
Like, follow, and subscribe as I toss it to you. What's going on here? Lots of questions. Who are these guys in this Acura? Why are they so mad at this woman that they're willing to do all of this? Why are they so brazen that they'll do all of it in broad daylight? What's going on with this story? Let me know what you think.